As someone that knows JavaScript, I'm contractually obligated to make a to-do app and post it on GitHub if I ever want to have a chance in any job interview. Since everyone already did this, I decided to put on my hipster hat and do something different, create the antithesis of a to-do, a procrastination do. You add tasks you will procrastinate, you can delete them, and as the days goes by, they will get bigger and bigger, remind you about all the things you want or should be doing right now, but keep procrastinating them. This will keep going until you can even use the application anymore. A metaphor for life, where if you keep procrastinating everything, there will be nothing left in the end but empty dreams and a non-working unfulfilled person. And push. You can get the source code below. Nothing fancy, just vanilla JavaScript and some CSS to not leave things too bare bones. But then I realized that I'm in a video, so I need to make things more interesting than this. Making this app was too simple since JavaScript is a pretty slick language to work with. I just opened a generic text editor and typed the code away and I was done. For an interesting video, we need something more challenging than this. Since I'm too lazy to make a more complex application, I'll just redo the same one but with a handicap. Handicaps are a great way to improve your skills while putting arbitrary roadblockers in your workflow. That's why I've worked only with Java in the past few years in hopes of becoming the greatest developer on this planet. Different from JavaScript, where we can dive into coding right away, in Java we need to do some prep work beforehand. First, this is a compiled language, not interpreted, so we need to make it easier to run the code by using a build system like Maven or Gradle. In this case we will be picking Gradle. After running Gradle in it and answering a couple of questions, we have the whole folder structure set up for us. Second, we need some libraries to help us solve some problems in our code. In the JavaScript project, I was using the local storage API to save and retrieve the items we were procrastinating. In the Java project, we will also be storing the items in a local file in JSON format. Unfortunately, Java does not provide a built-in solution to serialize/deserialize JSON objects, so we will be using a library called Jackson, no relation with the music group from the late 60s. Regarding the GUI, in web development we have HTML plus CSS out of the box. In Java we also have a solution that comes with the JDK called Swing, but it is an outdated set of classes that has not received any update in the past decade or so. The other alternative is a first-party library from Oracle named JavaFX. It is under active development, but with a somewhat small community and a not very broad documentation. The final option, i.e. the current industry standard, is to not use Java at all, and stick with the .NET framework if you need a desktop application. But since we are using Java here, we will pick the second option. With Gradle's help, we will install both of these libraries, something similar to what we do in Node with npm. For Jackson, we will declare him as a dependency here, which will make Gradle download the library and make it available for our project. And for JavaFX, we'll add it as a plugin, which Gradle will do the same as a library, but it will run some extra code from the plugin that will configure some things under the hood to make JavaFX work properly. Let's run the project to check if it is okay. Yes, everything checks. When working with Gradle in open source Java libraries, expecting anything to work will always be a gamble. The error message is actually misleading, it is blaming me for something missing in the code, but I already know that the culprit is the JavaFX plugin. This became evident after visiting its GitHub repo and seeing people complain about the latest version not working since December 2021. To be fair, this is open source, and the golden rule this guy tends to work on is, if you want something working, feel free to open APR. Since this version is just not working, the solution is to downgrade to an earlier version. Leave your bets on how low you think we are going.
I got it!
Well, not too far, thankfully. And finally, we will download Scene Builder, which is another whole piece of software that we will be using to compose our windows with a drag and drop interface. Now with this out of the way, we can finally start the implementation. Since we have already defined how our application will look like, let's start building up our GUI. While on the web we have HTML, here we have fxml, which is kinda the same thing but with some nifty features such as data binding. We will put the file in the resources folder and open it on Scene Builder. The idea here is pretty similar to with the CSS box model in regard to layout. We just need to put some containers here and there to lay out things around, put the widgets we need, and we have a GUI. But it's looking pretty Java if you will ask me. We need to change some colors and shapes around to give the same feeling of the original one. For that we can actually use CSS instead of scene builder and fxml. Not CSS as in cascading style shits, but CSS as in custom sucky style. You see, JavaFX is shipped with a custom CSS implementation of CSS2 where you need to put fx- in front of every property. This implementation dropped everything related to layout, leaving the rest kinda intact. At least that's enough to solve our problem here. The only real downside of this implementation is that whenever you have a problem, you need to use that Google feature to change the date results to only display things from 10 years ago to get answers for CSS2, or use the official JavaFX documentation that is a single HTML page made 10 years ago, not being updated since. With a style CSS file in our resources folder and some styles here and there, we got something similar to what we had previously. With the GUI in place, let's remove the script from JS and write some Java code. As you might know, Java is a strongly typed OOP language, which means more time writing and less solving problems. While in the JavaScript app we have the whole application in a single file, here we will have 7 files, each one with a class responsible for something. At the right we have our domain classes, and at the left we have the actual app classes with the business logic. In the middle is only the entry point for the whole operation, don't even mind him. Here we have the repository, task and a JSON task parser. The repository is pretty straightforward. Since we do not have the storage API, we have to make our own, which will read and write JSON content from a file in the file system. The task is a simple bag of data, a POJO for the intimate. And the JSON task parser is just a wrapper for the Jackson library to deal with JSON objects. In the entry point we have the infamous public static void main string brackets args method that every computer science student takes about a whole semester to memorize. This one only delegates its work to the real entry point, the FX application class. This is the bridge that connects us to JavaFX. By calling application launch from our main method and passing the FX application class, we are instructing JavaFX to start the engines and run the code within this class to set up the base configuration of the GUI, loading our fxml file and then showing something on the screen. And on the other side we have a real application that has the meat of the business logic of our anxiety-inducing app. FX application, as mentioned, just starts JavaFX and shows the app on screen. Tasks application works very closely with fxml controller, which is a class that binds directly to the GUI, something like a view presenter relationship. Now let's see how each thing was made. When the app loads, we have to get the current date. Tasks application makes sure to get this information with a Java API and send it to the controller so it can set on the screen on an initialize method. Right after, we have a text box used to create new tasks to procrastinate. During initialization, our controller set up a listener to check when the enter key was pressed inside the text box. This then will trigger the task application method add task, which will block any empty strings and create a new task object to save in our repo. Right after asking for the controller to redraw all tasks on the screen and clear its text box. When the controller has to redraw all items in the list, we got an advantage over vanilla JavaScript. While in there we have to write all of these create element and set attribute calls. In JavaFX we can make a template, just a simple fxml file. Create our UI for the item, use scene builder, then load it to a Java object to then get each of its components and manipulate them to display some text or do something else. In the JavaScript project I made so you can just change the text of each task and it will update the list of items in the browser storage automatically. In Java I slightly changed this approach because I knew I was writing to a file every time a keystroke was made, so to avoid this abuse on the file system I decided to use a timer. So when the user types something, the current timer is stopped and a new one is created and scheduled. If no other keystroke is made in 1 second, the timer will fire, saving the new task into the storage. Finally, the date change feature where the items grow in size had a pretty similar implementation to the JavaScript app. I used EM as a measure for the font size of these elements. Every time the date changes, I calculate the amount of days between the date that task was created and the current date. Then I did the big brain math to increase the EM value in decimal intervals as the amount of days was increasing. Then passed it back to the controller to update the style of each item. And after 425 lines of Java code compared to only 138 from JavaScript, we have something working similar to what we did with the JavaScript app. You add tasks, you will procrastinate. You can delete them, and as the days goes by, they will get bigger and bigger. That was what she said. And this will keep going until you can't even use the application anymore. A metaphor for life where nothing really works and you just give up at this point. By the way, you can also get the source for this one right below. Despite everything, I still strongly believe that Java is a very powerful, versatile and widely used tool for when you don't want to do anything serious and make internet videos like I'm doing right now, especially in a field where everyone just talks about JavaScript.